right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our work session. Today, for March 21st, today we're going to talk about the new sewer prioritization study and then the audit review. I'll quickly turn it over to the manager. Any comments, Scott?
No, I don't think so. I think we can jump right in with Jonathan's presentation.
You're on.
Members of Council, Jonathan Gale, Public Works Director. As noted, we're going to be talking about the new sewer prioritization study and CIP impacts. We started a study of sewer capacity and new sewer installation about almost 2 years ago to do two things. One, figure out where the next most important sewer is, and also where do we lack sewer capacity for the intensification of redevelopment, for the intensification of land use. Notable example of a close call in terms of sewer capacity is right here in the Market District, where the delivery of additional sewer capacity has arrived just in time for continued redevelopment. There was a time when we were bumping up against the ceiling for how much intensification of use could happen as we turned a warehouse industrial district into a high-density residential district. A lot more flushes of toilets when you put a lot more people into a space and stack them multiple stories up than you would have in a low person count warehouse where all the square footage is taken up with stuff. So we used, in consultation with the economic development team and development services staff, using Plan DSM as our guiding document. We hired Veenstra and Kim to analyze and then develop and facilitate a prioritization of what comes next as far as building the next pieces of sewers. That turned into 17 different areas that were evaluated. And like a lot of analysis, the first kind of half of that fell out pretty quickly, but we wanted to make sure that as far as targeted areas for redevelopment and development projects, that the existing sewer capacity, if any, was evaluated and at least determined to be adequate for expected future redevelopment, at least in the near term, densities. So the 8 of those dropped out very quickly, and then 9 survived to make to the next round of analysis that we then developed prioritization criteria for. That those next 9 got some preliminary 30,000-foot level analysis of what kind of sewer capacity would be needed to service those areas. And then we developed prioritization criteria that looked at cost of service per acre, what kind of development would go in there, and then importantly, how ready was that site for development.
So, go back to that map. Was that the 9?
This is all 17 that were examined.
So the letters are the ones that dropped out?
Yes. The numbers are the ones that survived.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
The question was there's letters and numbers on the map. The letters were the ones that were the first 8 that dropped out. The 9 survived for that second round of analysis, and we'll see them in more detail later.
So,
And all the ones that you're talking about in detail, they all have water already going there, correct?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
and so, in terms of, I guess I'm a little more curious about the development potential and what dropped out versus what didn't. Mm-hmm. So explain again, I guess, how that that sort of cutoff was, because, I mean, I think, at least it looks to me like some of the stuff that is proximate to downtown versus some of the outlying stuff that was prioritized, I guess I have questions about what's more likely to develop or be ready to develop sooner.
So the difference between what survived this first layer of screening versus what didn't is, did it have adequate sewer capacity to meet the projected needs at redevelopment densities? So the not necessarily drop out for redevelopment likelihood. Some of these locations that are shown with letters that did not survive that first screen can very well develop, but they also were determined to have existing adequate sewer capacity.
Got it. So for example, like A, B, and C, we might expect to see development and development with some level of density there. The existing sewer can handle that level, but there's a question of what level of density in that area or what level of development could be handled.
Yes. And at least at a preliminary level of analysis, those properties that were dropped out had sufficient sewer capacity to meet future redevelopment needs, projected future redevelopment needs.
Okay. So likely not, it's not even just we don't need to do these now, it's we might not need to redo these ever.
Unless the development or redevelopment plans for the areas noted in letters are significantly more intense than what our current development services team believes is going to be targeted for those areas, we would not expect to need to enhance their sewer capacity over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay.
Meaning it would need to be a much bigger building and much more dense use than is targeted or likely for those locations.
Right.
Possibility exists, someone could want to bring something in that was not anticipated, but in the estimation of the development services team, the density of projected or likely redevelopment in these areas, there is adequate sewer capacity to service those expected
Right.
developments.
That includes, for example, I mean, we've got on our agenda adopting the Grays Lake Master Plan, and that's one of these areas where it was assumed that there would be adequate capacity, even though there's potentially much more dense use there.
Yes.
So in a situation where the redevelopment outstripped the sewer, who would bear that cost? Or like, would we just say, like, we can't develop at that level right now, and we have to, like, redo this whole process?
If there's not adequate sewer service in an area that's already served by sewer, that would be on the ratepayers to expand the service capacity to bring that intensification of customers online. Where we have traditionally used benefited district sewers is where there is no sewer currently, and we're expanding sewer service in there with new trunk sewers.
Okay, thank you.
Then there's a cost district set up, and additional service charges, essentially a hookup charge, is charged on a per acre, dollars per acre basis to new customers in that area.
That makes sense.
Jonathan, my previous question, and you don't have to answer it now, unless you know the answer, can you send me the information where we're going to increase maybe possibly sewer and where there's not going to be any water at this time, and if we've had discussions with the Des Moines Water Works of how we can do that together? I know in years past that's kind of stifled development in some of these areas, that some have water, some don't have sewer, some have sewer, some doesn't have water. I would hate to make the same mistake again.
Yeah, I will tell you now that the absence of water service or adequate water service to the site will result in a deprioritization of that area in this analysis. So those areas will fall further down just because they'll need additional capital investment by outside parties to fully enable the development, while other ones just need sewer capacity to be able to prime them for either development in the first place or redevelopment. Those will have floated higher in the analysis. So we're not expecting in the very short term to put sewer where there is no water, because there'd be nothing.
Okay, so is that purple and green areas?
Sorry, there'd be nothing to flush. That would fall lower down the priority scale. Just a quick look at the total outcome here. This adds up to $17 million worth of sewers, and I'll show you the kind of the scale of the impacts to the CIP at the end here, but I just wanted to show you here, citywide are the kind of the survivors of the 17 areas. It made the 9, and we've broken them into 2 different tiers of priority. The first 2 were the kind of the so obvious that we have already taken advanced steps to proceed with them. And the remainder is where the real kind of work in prioritization was for sorting out in what order do we pursue these projects so that we can best service the needs of the community and let development proceed in a logical fashion. So the two priorities there, and I think I mentioned this at the budget workshop where we were talking about sewers, was the first one. We've already asked you to approve a design contract for the design of that priority area 1 sewer to service the soccer stadium and the attendant redevelopment in the area. The second priority area is East Army Post Road. Again, long a priority and already known to be important to development and redevelopment, right next to, given its proximity to a major regional node on the planned DSM map. The remainders tended to be at the edges, so that's where we put a lot of time and discussion with the development services team and the consultant and our own staff to direct the development in the right direction so we could step into this in a reasonable fashion. So just a quick look at each of these priority areas. We'd be adding sewer here to service the stadium and the surrounding areas. This would be trunk sewer. There is a big WRA sewer that runs through that area. You see the big red line that runs right next to where the stadium is going to be. That's a WRA sewer. It's very large and fills up and could pose a problem with surcharging back into sewer pipes in the neighborhood if we were to allow these properties to connect directly to it. That would not be good. So we want to put in a city sewer that will get to carry the sewage from each of those properties and carry it away before it connects into the system.
I'm just a little confused because, and I agree, I mean, I'm all for this, adding this sewer. But I find it interesting that when somebody's going to come in and develop this, and we as a city is saying, well, we're just going to put in this sewer for you. When we have all these outlying areas where we have annexed and we expect to have development there, but we've never put in sewers, and we've said, well, Mr. Developer, if you want to build houses, you better put in your own sewer. I'm not sure I understand how come we're going to pay for a sewer for some people, but not pay for sewers for others.
The difference between what we're installing and what we would ask a developer to install exists in this case here too. This is the trunk sewer. A good illustration is right next door to this purple line here. Is you see the kind of the spine of sewers that are servicing the Gray's Landing neighborhood, the residential pieces there.
The purple?
That was, yeah, there's just to the right of the purple pipe.
Oh,
The purple would be the proposed. That's the trunk sewer that would get
Yeah.
service to the neighborhood in a way that's satisfactory. I mean, there is service there now with that WRA pipe. We could connect directly to it, but it would be an unsatisfactory connection for a lot of reasons. So we are, as a city, putting in the purple pipe.
okay.
The developer would still need to put in the whole neighborhood's worth of sewer mains that service the individual properties that the properties connect to. That would still remain the obligation of the developer here, just as if they were in a greenfield development. The difference between this and greenfield developments is that we're not anticipating benefited districts for some of these. For already sewered areas, we have traditionally not done benefited districts because the properties already exist, and in most cases, they already have and had a sewer connection. They're just redeveloping and intensifying their use, whereas a greenfield has never been serviced. So when we run a trunk line out there, the new properties that are new customers are then assessed the connection fee.
Right.
In this case, these are all places that have had sewer service in the past. Those buildings have all been wiped out and their connections erased, but they have already had sewer service, so we're adding additional pipe to better serve an existing area.
Okay,
And we will still require them to add all the little pipes that the smaller street level development will still have additional pipe that the developer will still have to put in. This is that next level of up size pipe that's in between the neighborhood scale or the street scale, excuse me, the street scale, and then the regional pipes are owned and are owned by the WRA, like the big one that runs through there. This is that mid-level.
okay.
Is the WRA pipe the big green one or the long red ones?
It's the big red one that runs north-south, just at the terminus,
48
the westernmost terminus of the purple one, yeah. That's a
or
big- that's a big-
78?
I'm not sure what the diameter is, but
Okay.
it's a large one. So priority area 1 is essentially the stadium and the surrounding neighborhood. Priority area 2 is East Army Post Road. And in the actual implementation of the program, this is 3 different pipes. It's a little difficult to see, but there's a break along Army Post Road that's actually 2 different pipes that go 2 different directions. So we would anticipate doing those 2. The third there servicing the basin to the north would be lower priority, and you'll see that reflected in the implementation timeline.
I can't really tell from your map, but is County Line Road on here? Is that the green line that's at the bottom?
I want to say that's,
Would that be, because now we're into Warren County. I know it's annexed into Des Moines, but wouldn't that be County Line Road along that bottom green
that's
line?
Pine Avenue there. I think County Line is 1 big block to the south.
Okay, I just can't see from this
Yeah,
map.
the contour lines make it a little dense. Sorry. I don't, County Line Road is not shown here.
Hey, Jonathan, from Southeast 14th to where Section B
Down, yeah.
is,
Yeah?
But that's Army Post.
is there a sewer there already existing, or are we just not going to fill that segment in with the existing businesses that are there?
There's existing sewer there now. It runs south from Army Post at the start of that purple pipe.
But there's nothing on our Post Road right there.
Those would
that
be,
connects-
that southeast corner of Army Post and Southeast 14th would be serviced by connecting to the red pipe shown there by privately owned sewer laterals. The public pipe
Okay.
is the red one. They'll have, I mean, they will have sewer service there. Because on the corner is a restaurant, and we would not have a restaurant on a septic tank.
I can't really tell again from this map, but Greenfield Plaza, is that down still south from here? Because-
Yes, that's further south and further west.
And they're still on septic, or have they been converted?
They are on their own sanitary sewer.
Their own sanitary
Yeah.
now, okay.
And they are, as a neighborhood association, members of the WRA. So they are
Okay.
they are contributing flow and fees
Okay.
accordingly.
So maybe a question for Scott. I know you have that labeled A and B, but if there's a larger development that obviously is interested in building on Army Post Road, would that move up obviously the priority, or how would that work, Scott?
Yeah, there's always an opportunity. Thank you. There's always an opportunity when we have a development come in that's unexpected to relook at the CIP. So it really depends on the assurances that it's going to happen and what those magnitudes are that we would look at shifting. Is it something that economic development's already aware of?
Yes.
So then that should have been part of these conversations. Probably
Okay.
why the A and B are listed as such.
Yeah, we have A and B both rolled up together into one one project.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Priority area 3 was kind of that next tier. As I said, 1 and 2 are, clearly the highest priority of the 9, and then the 3 through 9 don't necessarily follow through, but in numerical order. So that's one, almost might have gone with letters on this piece here. But you'll see the actual priority reflected in the CIP at the map here. I just wanted to use the number convention is how we've named the areas, but you can see what's going on here. In each of these priority areas, you have to analyze where gravity will take the water. So you'll see 3 purple lines here. And we will take the opportunity of pipe C at the bottom there with the reconstruction of Broadway to try to tuck that into the project to deliver a cheaper pipe installation so that we can put that pipe in at the same time as the roadway is being rebuilt in that joint project with the city and the county to get the pipe in cheaper and at lower cost.
But now some of these, there's no water up here. We've still got houses that are on well water up here.
Yeah, I don't think we have the water mains shown on this section here.
So is that something that we would work with Des Moines Water Works? Because I've tried for years and years, and Bill Stowe just kept saying, it's too expensive, but it concerns me that we still have residents on well water.
It would be, that would be reflected in the deprioritization of the upper basins here if there's not water present.
There's
But
not.
we can work with Des Moines Water Works on trying to get their improvements extended. So
Because-
they have their own decision-making process.
But
that
it's
guides their
interesting
investment.
because we brought water in when we built the ball fields. There's water up to where the ball fields are, but if you go straight up 46, there's a whole housing, there's, I don't know, a dozen houses that are still on well water.
That would be a major obstacle to development.
Okay.
I don't have a good answer for getting Des Moines Water Works to install water mains, sorry.
They
We
would,
want water.
in order to do the sewer, you wouldn't have done the study if they didn't have water?
We were analyzing the land, the basins, and their redevelopment potential. The absence of adequate water service would result in its deprioritization
Okay.
in the that's reflected in the actual plan for construction. And they're not in numerical, it's labeled priority area 3, but not all 3 of these pipes inside this are equally prioritized.
And does water connection work the same way that sewer does for a new development? Like, I mean, if you're a new developer, you're gonna connect to this main sewer line that we're building. Does water work the same way? You connect to the nearest water line that is in the area, or?
I would assume so, yeah.
Yes, it does. And these homeowners have all said, we know it's going to cost us. We expect to pay to get hooked up to water. The trunk line's just not there.
The next area that we looked at is here along Highway 5, trying to deliver some sewer service there to unserviced areas. And again, not necessarily the 4th priority, even though it's numbered priority area 4. And in consultation with the development services team, same outcome, that not all of these are equal priority. So you'll see that showing up in the final analysis here.
Sorry, can I just clarify? So the priority levels are actually the first 2, and then the rest of them are priority 1 and priority 2, but then we're just numbering them to
Priority 1 and 2, priority area 1 and 2, the 1 through 9 is a naming convention. It
Yeah,
does not
okay.
reflect their actual priority. Except in the case of priority area 1 and 2, they are, that actually works out
That's number
that
one
way.
and number two, and then the rest are equal?
Yeah, and although inside priority area 2, there's 3 pipes, and one of them is far less important than the other 2. So as we go through the 4 through 9, there's 2, sometimes 3 pipes per area, and some of those, even inside that area, are less important than others. The full shakeout is at the very end with the 10 or 15-year plan to get them built.
Got it.
Just familiarizing you with the locations so we can demonstrate that that we're hitting the areas that are top of mind for development potential and redevelopment potential. So this will be corresponding to the extension of Watrous Avenue. That area there needs sewer to continue intensification of development. Area 6 here is, this is the far southeast corner of town. Where there is existing sewer to connect to and extend from, though significant discussions still ongoing about how likely development is, given some of these places don't have water, though the uppermost quadrant there, part of the quadrant, the pipe labeled D does have water service and has at least some preliminary interest from developers to construct. And as we get into design, the potential exists to, this is just high-level topographical analysis. You can punch across basins if you push the sewer deep enough to service an area to make water flow uphill, you can actually go downhill underground. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that the pipes will be installed this way, so we can push sewer service into nearby geographies if the topography works out right. And this corner here would be a case, the Sterling Trace neighborhood there might have enough proximity and elevations to be able to push the sewer pipe into another topographical basin. So area 7 here along Highway 65.
Could I ask you real quick, did that area A, B, and C did not have water? Or does not?
Correct, it does not.
D does?
Yes.
Thank you.
Priority 7 here along Highway 65, way south of the bypass. Priority area 8 along Army Post and Highway 5. This is over by the airport where Highway 28 bends from Norwalk on its way into town. Again, some of these are more likely than others. But pipe A there was, if I'm remembering correctly from our map, from our chart, the most likely of development sites, given its proximity to the airport, flatness of the existing lot and its access to the street system. And priority area 9 is way south alongside south of Highway 5, some expected residential areas there. So what this looks like in terms of the CIP, as I mentioned at the budget briefing, we put in placeholders knowing that this was almost done. So we're expanding those out in terms of what's available. And I do want to address your attention to the very bottom or second bottom there, targeted septic system service areas. We are including in the long-term plan the ability to put in short runs of pipe to get sewer service to existing neighborhoods that are not expected to develop or redevelop but are not connected to sewer. There's still over 700 homes across the city that are on septic service, and we would like over time to get them all connected. And this approach here makes an allowance for what's probably one or two, depending on the size of the projects, 1 or 2 projects to install a couple manholes and a couple hundred feet of pipe to extend existing sewer service to places that don't presently have it, and then kind of eat away at places that have water but are still on septic and solve that long-term problem. We get phone calls every year to the Permanent Development Center when someone is trying to sell a house and their house has failed the septic test. They're required by city ordinance to hook up if they are within 200 feet of a sewer main. This would shorten that 200 feet. Oftentimes they're not, so they have to renew their septic system in order to sell the house. This would permit them to, at the time of, if you got a 30-day window, you can hook up to sewer a lot faster than you can hook up to septic. I'm not anticipating this would be a compulsory connection, except at the time of sale of the home if the septic system does not pass the test. But this would let us, over time, chip away at that 700 and get everybody inside the city eventually sewer availability, so that when they are actually connected, or when they are actually in need of connecting, it'll be there and available for them.
And do you think it would cost, if I'm within 200 feet, would it cost about as much to hook up as it would to put in a new septic system?
It depends on how far that excavation needs to go. That's the primary driver of the cost. But if it's running right through the front of your home, across right through the street, it can often be less expensive than renewing the septic system. So this is what the 5-year CIP is, just a short-term calendar look. The long-term look with the whole plan looks about like this. And you'll see those areas that don't have water service are all falling towards the bottom of the map. And that provides us time to work with Des Moines Water Works as much as we can to get to get water service to those areas. We would not anticipate installing sewer in a place that does not have water service, so this could just continue stretching out. But all other things being a perfect world, this would be the order that we would pursue this work and the timeline that we might expect to see it done.
So has this been presented to Waterworks to say, how could we work together on their projects?
Yes.
Okay.
I do know they have a lot on their plate, and maybe new service may not be their highest priority, but we can work with them to see what they're willing to undertake.
Any other questions anybody has for Jonathan?
Very helpful, Jonathan. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming.
Sure thing. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the audit review.
Mayor and council, we've got our annual presentation of the audit and the certified annual report. Nick, are you going to start us out, or are you going to have Heidi? Okay, you may. Yeah.
Do you want to comment about what you and I talked about last night?
I think that you might want to use it if one
Oh,
of
with,
you want. If you need.
oh, no, maybe it gets brought up.
You want to take it?
All right, thanks for having us this morning as Robert gets the presentation pulled up here. I'm Heidi Hopkirk with RSM, the partner on your engagement. We'll be presenting some information related to the June 30th, 2021 financial statements. We're going to present some auditor communications, which is in the packet that you were just handed out. We'll also summarize some of the financial results of June 30th, 2021, and then I'll talk briefly about the single audit. So first, our required communications to City Council include these bulleted items. The first one is our auditor's responsibility. So we come into the city as your external auditors, and we audit your financial statements under two sets of standards, the generally accepted auditing standards and then also the government auditing standards. Under both sets of standards, we review, perform samples of information that management provides to us. The first set is what we provide an opinion over, which tells you whether your financial statements are materially correct or not. You did receive an unmodified or clean opinion. That's the best opinion you can receive on those financial statements. And what that tells you as council is that the financial statements are not materially misstated based on our audit procedures. The second set of standards, the government auditing standards, we look at your internal control process and also compliance as it relates to the financial statements. We issue a separate letter related to that, and I'm going to talk about those results a little bit later on in the presentation. In the current year, the city did adopt a new accounting standard. Every year, the GASB, which is the standard you follow, do issue various types of standards, which requires management to relook at how they record certain things based on the information within the standards. In the current year, you adopted GASB 84, which is related to fiduciary activities. These are monies that you hold for outside parties and for other purposes, had a different definition in the past. So this GASB 84 changed the definition of a fiduciary activity. As a result of that, you saw some shifts in your fiduciary activities that were presented. So if you look at last year's report, there were agency funds that were reported. Under the new definition, those are called custodial funds, and they actually have an equity or net position attached with them. As part of the change in the definition, there were a couple agency funds that no longer met that definition, so those had to be incorporated into the city's governmental funds, I think mainly the general fund. So as part of that transition, why I'm telling you all of this is that you will see in the auditor's opinion, there's an emphasis of matter paragraph that says your financial statements were restated due to that implementation. So I always think it's key to let you know this is due to changes in the financial statements. We did not find an error causing that restatement, that it's just due to those changes in definitions and now making your financial statements in accordance with the new accounting standards. As all financial statements, yours have judgment and estimates prepared by management. As part of our audit process, we do procedures over those estimates that are significant. In the current year, we did find and recommended an audit adjustment related to the local option sales tax estimate. There's a portion that's held back by the state, and it's not paid out until November of each year, so management's required to actually estimate that. When we come out and audit, we have the luxury of hindsight, so we know how much the state's paid you. In the current year, the difference between the actual amount and the estimate was an amount that required an audit adjustment. Management posted that and agreed with it, and so that adjustment's reflected within your financial statements. All the other estimates that we did procedures over, we thought they were reasonable, and that local option sales tax receivable was also reasonable after the audit adjustment was made. There was one uncorrected misstatement in the current year. This is when we find something as part of the audit procedures, we present it to management. These are corrections that they felt are not material to the financial statements, and we concurred with them, but we're required to report them. In the current year, it was related to the housing authority and some revenues that were recognized in the prior year that should have been recognized in the current year. So at the end of this year, all the amounts are appropriate, but those are reflected as a prior period adjustment or error that was corrected in the current year. We had no significant issues that we discussed with management, nor did we have any disagreements or difficulties performing the audit. And the consultation with other accountants, we're not aware of any as it relates to the city side of the financial statements, but there are a couple of other auditors or component auditors that we rely on as part of our audit. You've got two component units, the airport and the library foundation, that are included, and those are actually audited by another firm. We have communications with them, and we rely on their audits related to those numbers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert, and he's going to give you some financial summarized information.
Thanks, Heidi. And I'm Robert Kreiser. I'm a senior manager at RSM and the engagement manager on the audit. So I just want to talk a little bit about financial results, but really quick, I also want to thank James and Tim and Nick and their entire team. They're wonderful to work with. They do a great job. This was another kind of unique year with doing the audit remote and just kind of everything that happened and kind of additional things that we had to look at that Heidi will talk a little bit about later when it comes to additional major programs this year due to all the additional COVID-related funding. So I just wanted to thank them and let you all know that they do a great job working with us throughout the audit, which allows us to get our work done. Just want to talk a little bit about the revenues for governmental funds. Overall revenues increased about $38.5 million, or 10.9%. The majority of these increases were in two spots, first being taxes. Taxes increased about $7.8 million, or 3.6%. Majority of that was due to property taxes, which increased about $17 million, and then was offset by some decreases in other taxes, which was really kind of related to the pandemic. Intergovernmental revenues increased $34.8 million, or 55%. The majority of this was due to the airport paying off $22 million worth of debt, and then the majority of the remaining increase was related to COVID-related funds, specifically the Coronavirus Relief Fund and Emergency Rental Assistance. One other thing that you will note that will look a little different in this year's financials compared to last year is the American Rescue Plan Act. So that increase in revenues does not have anything to do with the ARPA funds. Those ARPA funds, as they have not yet been expended, are sitting in unearned revenue until there's been expenditures, which none occurred prior to June 30, 2021.
Is this, what we're looking at, is this in this packet? I don't see it.
No, it's not.
It is not. This is just me speaking to the financials.
Okay.
I
That's
apologize.
just kind of
if
an
that's not
important paper, I thought. Okay.
This is the expenditure side. Overall expenditures increased $79.7 million, or 18.3%. And the majority of this increase fell into three different buckets. The first being community and economic development, which increased $9.4 million, or 36%. And a large portion of this was due to the emergency rental assistance COVID dollars, which were passed through to subrecipients, and that was about $6.4 million. Capital outlay increased $49.8 million, or 60%, and really this fluctuates each year dependent on the number of projects. And there were just more projects really in fiscal year 2021 compared to 2020.
Capital outlay would be like the projects in our CIP.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes. And debt service increased $14.3 million, or 13%. And again, the majority of this increase was due to that payoff of the airport bonds. So you see that on the revenue side and here as that's related to the airport.
And just to clarify, as a reminder, why we're talking about those airport revenue bonds is those were still in the name of the city, even though the airport was responsible for making those payments when they separated. Those first set of bonds were still in the city's name, so the city had legal responsibility. So you still showed the debt and you showed a receivable from the airport. So there was kind of a flow through on the financial statements of money being received from the airport to relieve that receivable, and then a payment on the debt. But now that debt's fully been paid. So that's a little unique because you might think, well, the airport's responsible for those. Why are we talking about an inflow and outflow of revenue and expenditure? So just wanted to remind you of that situation.
So does that mean future bonds won't be reflected?
So was that part of our debt service?
Yes, that's part of the debt service. Those bonds, I can't remember the year, but they were issued in like 08, 10, something like that. So the new bonds that the airport is issuing, they're issuing in their name. So this was the last piece that was outstanding at the time that the airport broke off, and it was part of those agreements at that time when they broke off.
And to Joe's question, that means the new bonds won't be part of our debt service levy.
Correct. Yep. And these old bonds weren't part of the levy either because they were revenue bonds. So they were pledged to the airport revenue dollars. So they weren't in that general debt service levy.
And where was the housing assistance, the rental assistance that you talked about?
The rental assistant expenditures is in community and economic development.
Oh, there, community and economic development.
Yep.
Okay.
So those dollars were received by the city and then passed through subrecipients and therefore recorded as revenue and intergovernmental revenues and then expenditures here.
Okay.
The next slide here, this demonstrates the number of days that the general fund unrestricted fund balance would be able to pay general fund expenditures as of a point in time. This point in time, of course, being June 30, 2021. At that point, the number of days was 107, which was an increase of 25 days compared to the prior year.
So the unrestricted, can you explain specifically what that amount was?
Yeah.
Or what you're, yeah.
So the unrestricted fund balance in the general fund would mean all the dollars that are not restricted or not assigned or not committed. So basically, anything that has not that is unrestricted can be utilized for those general fund expenditures that have that don't have either from a standpoint of restrictions. You know, it could be it would be external third-party restrictions, and then commitments would be things that are committed by the board. So all the dollars that do not fall in those categories.
So this is saying if we didn't have any more income, we would have 107 days essentially?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, you'd be able to pay your bills essentially for 107 days as of that point in time. And again, this is only as of that point in time, you know, as June 30, 2021.
So what is an ideal, go ahead. I was just going to say, so what is your ideal amount? I mean, I know you guys like a lot of days, but what is a amount we would want to be at?
So that's a great question, and what's asked by a lot of council and boards. It really depends on your flow of revenues. The Government Officers Association does say around 60 days, but each organization should look at that independently because you need to consider your flow of revenues.
Okay.
Some organizations, right before their year end, might collect a lot of property taxes, so they have a large inflow. Based on where you're at, I would say 60 to 90 days is what we see in the state of Iowa as a goal. I believe the city also has a percentage goal that you look at. Scott, do you know the number of days?
I'll
that
let
equates
Nick
to?
address that.
Okay.
But I don't want to take credit. It's been a few years for,
Yeah, this policy is 20, I think it's 15%, but I think we're looking at possibly increasing that for the debt rating realm. It helps with debt rating as well. When you actually show this is kind of like one of those features that they really look at to make sure that you're financially sound in that regard. And so from that standpoint, I believe AAA is considered at 30%, at a percentage versus a days. So that's usually what we look at.
And what would that number be?
I want to say,
it's approaching 60. Isn't it?
yeah, something like that, I think, because our expenses are around the 200, about 200,000, I think, at this
200
point. Or 200 million, I mean. So
So it'd be, how much of that?
30% would be 60 million. So that would be a
little
goal that
more
we
than
would
that.
want if we were going to try and strive for the AAA bond rating.
Okay.
So just-
Closer to 70, I think, but.
So just to be clear, the 60 to 90 days is to make sure that the city can pay their bills from a technical standpoint. But to get better credit ratings, lower interest rate on our debt, that's a conversation that involves, 15, 16 different factors, one of which is the general fund balance. And they like to see that 25, even 30% be the target, so.
Yeah. And that kind of flows with how your expenses go. So it's based off of, so not necessarily the days aspect, but it's actually more of a percentage basis that they do that off of.
And we're at that level that's like right below AAA right now?
I think we're at 20, I want to say 20, in the low 20s currently.
Okay, but we're at AA plus or something like that?
Oh, we're AA, yeah, we're AA, we're not AAA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No,
Appreciate
you're
the
fine, no.
clarifications. And then my final slide is just enterprise fund operating income excluding depreciation. And overall, that increased 4.8 million, or about 15%. And the majority of that increase was really due to the sewer fund increase, about 7.3 million. And the majority of that increase was related to a 5.5 million increase in charges for sales and services, mainly due to rate and usage increase. That was offset by a parking decrease of 3.1 million, which was really just related to a $2.9 million decrease in usage and charges for sales and services just due to decreased parking usage, mainly because of the pandemic. There's no other questions. I'll turn it back over to Heidi to talk about compliance.
So the last slide we have is to talk about our compliance reporting. I mentioned earlier governmental auditing standards. This is where we look at the internal controls of the city. And not only do we determine, we look at ability, we look at what we find during the audit process. During the current year, we did have one material weakness. There was an outside department that had a system that when they were converting to a new system, it appeared that maybe there was some receivables that the finance department hadn't been reconciling with the individual department on that. So there looked like there was a potential misstatement. Management looked into it. We also audited what management did our own procedures, and we both concluded that no receivable was appropriate. But part of that control process is making sure there is that communication and reconciliation to make sure there's no material misstatements or errors between the two systems. So this is a material weakness because there was a potential of a material amount. So again, we didn't find a material error. It's that potential in the internal control process that could have been there, which rose it to the level of a material weakness. There was also a significant deficiency, and that related to the entry that I talked about earlier, related to the local option sales tax receivable, based on the dollar amount and the estimation process. Then the last thing that we do as your auditors is we perform a single audit. I do want to let you know that this is still in process. It's really close to being completed this year. But I want to give you an update. We did audit 6 major programs. It's going through some final reviews on our end. 6 major programs is unusual for the city. We're normally at 2 or 3. And what that means is for those major programs, we dive deeper into the compliance requirements. The federal agencies provide us as auditors the guidance on what they want us to look at, and then we perform procedures and testing over those compliance requirements. The uptick in the number of programs was related to the COVID funding, and what the federal agencies did is they made those high-risk programs, so that told us as auditors that we pretty much had to test them if they were over a certain threshold, which was based on a dollar amount. So we did look at the emergency shelter grant, the emergency rental assistance, the disaster grant, public assistance, and the coronavirus relief fund. We looked at all 4 of those programs this year, and then we also looked at the community development block grant and the homeland security grant, which didn't have COVID funding related to it. Based on our testing so far, which, like I said, we're close to being done, we have no compliance findings or internal control findings over those programs, and each one of those looks like they'll also receive an unmodified or clean opinion related to those. Once that's finalized here in the next week or so, we'll provide management with final reports, which they'll provide to you. If there's any changes, we will be in contact, but where we stand right now, it doesn't look like anything will be reported out of the ordinary. That's all we had for a formal presentation, so we would open it up to any questions that you haven't already asked.
Anybody have anything?
Yep.
Joe? Okay.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Carl had a question.
Carl?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I knew Carl.
So for the federal programs, specifically COVID-related, have we expended all the eligible funds that we could, and we've not returned any dollars to the federal government because we were unable to spend them?
So I can only speak through June 30th, 2021. So at that point,
sure.
Yep, not everything was expended because of the timing. So it continued to be expended in 2022. So I don't know if you want management to speak to that. And some of them might even go out longer. Some of them have period of performance where you're able to spend it even beyond June 30th, 2022. So this will be a 2 to 3 year process. There were several dollars spent during 2021. We didn't find any problems with the dollars that were being spent, what they were being used on, but there were still dollars available that are continued to be expended in 2022 and potentially beyond.
And so
Nick,
far
you
we
wanna
haven't.
make a comment?
And so far we haven't returned any dollars. That's good.
And I understand that there are some home funds left, and pretty significant amount for that program.
I have, not, kind of related to the audit, but kind of off of that. The very first slide that you showed was pretty significant to me, to show about the increase in property taxes that we as a city have collected. And I know we didn't raise the millage rate, but the county has increased the values of the homes. So we've collected quite a bit more money from our residents. And to me, it's apparent that Des Moines is becoming less affordable every day. And we are knocking seniors out of our city because we've got increased stormwater, increased sewer rates, all of these things that are making it really expensive. I think we as a city really need to take a look at what we can do to give some tax relief maybe to seniors so they can stay in their homes. You know, they're paying a lot in property taxes. I would just encourage us to do something, because we're just getting more and more people that are leaving our city. That's just my thought. I know other communities do things to help, you know, the seniors, maybe they put a cap on their taxes, or
No,
they do.
I'm not familiar with any of that, so I'd be very
Oh, other
curious to.
states, they do.
Oh, other states
Yeah,
outside of
other
Iowa.
states, not
Yeah,
here.
Iowa law
Yeah, no, I'm not talking
makes it,
about.
we'd have to get some law changes up at the state level to make that kind
So
of.
what you're saying, that that's impossible to do?
Well, I wouldn't say impossible. It would take partnership with the state,
Okay.
with legislative. And obviously, the council is well aware that the tax rate was lowered due to the sales tax implementation. So, you know, we do have a much lower tax rate than we've had in a lot of years. And that is voiced as a concern. You'll hear me as my talking points tonight with the budget, talk about the responsibility that the council's had in keeping that tax rate lower. So we always look at opportunities with different federal grants and incentive programs to help our community with housing costs. One of which is pretty important is our abatement program. But there are several other ways we try and help.
One of the other things that I think we ought to be aware of, because I sit in on the, our assessors' meetings, is that, as you probably know, Linda, those values are driven by sales.
Correct.
And so the
Correct.
fact that the price of these homes are, as you point out, is going up as well as commercial property,
Correct.
is driving value up.
Correct.
So, you know, we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place as to what we can do about
And
it.
I get that, but as Des Moines gets older, we have more and more residents that are living in their same homes that they've been in for 40 years. And, you know, their taxes just keep going up because the values of the surround, you know,
Sure.
sales that are comparable.
Sure, their equity in their homes
Yeah,
are going up at
yeah,
that same.
Yeah, it is. That's absolutely true, but it's just a thought. I just want to mention it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for having us this morning.
Thank you.
Scott, anything else?
No, a full agenda for tonight.
All right, do we have, what time are we going to convene? Any pre-meeting or anything?
We don't have
We have housing.
Yeah, 4:45.
All right. We'll see everybody back here about 4:45, and until then, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.